So now we're going to talk about a little bit about the discussion, right? So then now we've had the introduction. The methods and research is really very straightforward, describing what you've done, the findings. But the discussion, like the introduction, is sort of qualitative, right? We're not talking about here's just the data, but it's what does the data mean, and that can be really challenging and important, right? So we've talked about like the introduction, right? We want to have a summary of the topic. You want to interpret your results, report previous study findings, right, to set up how your data is different or unique, then the implications of that. Lastly, I think this is often overlooked, the limitations of your study. I think you know your research best, and many researchers are shy about this. They don't want to diminish their research, but the limitations are really important because it can be helpful both for a ethical standpoint of talking about where there might be gaps, but also setting up future researchers to build on what you've done. I think that can really be helpful. And the take-home message, right? What do you want to make sure people understand from this paper? And that can be even more important when you look at other formats, like say you're writing a poster or an abstract. So let's walk through 6 steps about how to craft an ideal discussion section, kind of like we did with the introduction section. Right? You want to present a very brief summary of the central topic, right? So as you start your, you think of a manuscript, right? You've presented the results, and now we have that section that's a discussion, right? So you want to have that brief summary of the central topic, reiterate that. Um, as you can see here from the description, you want to extend the scientific results to the broader implications, right? Why do your findings matter? Why should anyone care? So you want to provide that background when it comes to the study topic or the field, so that it seems connected back to the discussion where you've presented some of that as well. And then as we go through here, then you want to next interpret your results, right? So we've set up what's been known in the field historically, but then in a very, it can be challenging to do this in an unbiased way. Talk about where do you fit in, right? How does this fit into the larger pattern of research? You don't want to enforce an interpretation onto the readers, but really just um, suggest where it could fit in. And it needs to be very, just here are the facts, logically presented. Then you also, at this point, also want to mention anything unexpected or minor findings, and manipulate probably too strong a word, but you don't want to kind of bias the data. You really want to really make sure you're telling it kind of how it is. Um, and then that that can be important then to work in the context of previous studies, right? Comparing your results to what's been done in the literature elsewhere, particularly if your findings are contradictory or really unique. It can be important to kind of put that into the broader picture. And explain what is missing in the previous studies and how your findings build upon the results of these studies. I think that's really important as well. And then this is something that can be exciting in terms of, where do we go next, right? What are the implications of research? Whether that's going to be you doing the research or the field in general. Why is the study important? How does this contribute? And then also, where can we go from here? How does your study contribute to existing knowledge, and then how can it spur future studies, right? So let's say your finding is really unique, right? And that we go back to our initial example of understanding cardiovascular health in Saudi Arabia. Let's say you find something that's very, very distinct and very different. From there, you're able to then suggest, we need to have further research or further grants. We need to be able to do more there, and build on that. So that's sort of the idea in that fourth section. And then I mentioned this initially, right, when we are doing that overview, but talking about the limitations, right? So you want to mention the limitations of your study. Maybe it was a too small population. Maybe it was there was maybe I don't know. You were only looking at you had limited budget or resources. So there's maybe opportunities to improve upon your data collection opportunities. Maybe it wasn't represented the target population. Sometimes when you do a clinical trial, the population that is included, maybe just because of just the patients that enrolled, they're not representative of the larger population. So there could be opportunities there that to expand on that. And you really just want, and it's gonna be challenging, but you want to be self-critical. What could be done better? What could have been done in a different way, um, so that you can build on that. And then lastly, the take-home message. I think that's really important. And this will be also be, of course, worked into at the end here. We'll go back and kind of draft an abstract, but I think working that into the larger presentation I think is really important. Is what do we want to make sure that it's really clearly understood. Oftentimes in posters if you're at a conference, it's actually like just bulleted out as a couple key things there and the conclusions. So I think that's another thing to be aware of as you build out your manuscript.